721 Big 550 KTRS. Our guest in studio is U.S. Air Force General retired Ronald Keyes. Sir, welcome to Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Hey, McGraw, it's great to be here.
You are going around the country talking about oil dependency and the fact that it is a national security threat.
That's right. I, in a collection of 25, 30 admirals and generals, work for an organization called the Military Advisory Board on Energy Security, Climate Change. And the concern is, of course, on the military side, energy security is a big deal. It provides combat vulnerabilities. If you look at the data, about 10% of the Marine casualties are taken in fuel and water convoys. The Army says that they lose a young man or woman about every 24 convoys, so there's a real issue with the supply of energy on the battlefield. Second problem we have is the instability in the pricing of oil and gas causes a big problem in the budget. If the price of oil goes up $10 a barrel, it's going to be a $1.3 billion cost across DOD. That's money that's not in the budget. It's got to be taken from somewhere to pay. You got to pay your bills. And of course, the third thing is because a lot of the places that we get our oil, they don't like us. It constrains our diplomatic options. The things we might like to say or might like to do, or the places we want to base, we can't because we're afraid of repercussions in some of these countries that provide us fuel.
General, while many people out there agree with you, how am I going to get that B-2 bomber from Whiteman Air Force Base over to Iraq?
Well, you're only going to get on JP4. That's the only way it's going to work. And so for the short term, what we have is we're going to have to use fossil fuels when you're talking about transportation. Our trucks, our trains, our airplanes, they run on that fossil fuel. But at some point, you're going to run out of oil, and at some point, you run out of natural gas. Now, that's a long way down the road, and it's hard for us to focus on that. But it's time now to start looking at what can we substitute. The military's looked at that. The Air Force and the Navy have qualified all our airplanes to fly on a 50-50 blend of biofuel and JP8. Looking at what are the effects of artificial fuel, if you will, on our engines, our afterburners, our support mechanisms, we can do it. But the problem is right now it costs $26 a gallon or somewhere in that area. We can't go to war on $26 a gallon, and the people of the United States are not going to work on $26 a gallon.
Is the natural gas boom in the U.S. helping things out?
Well, for the short term, it's good news, bad news. Yes, it helps things out because it has really depressed the cost of natural gas. But it also, just like if you look at the signs around the filling stations here in St. Louis, the price of gas is somewhere around $3.15. I drove back from Atlanta. It was $2.85 out on I-85. We're not very worried about alternative fuels or the future when we're looking at gas prices like that. The same thing with natural gas. It allows you to substitute natural gas. The problem is there's another bookend of this. Part of it's energy security, but the other is climate change. There are a lot of people who don't like to talk about climate change. But if you look at the body of work that's been done by at least 20, 25 very prestigious scientific organizations, it's happening. You can look at the curve and start in 1900, and that curve, yes, it goes up and down year by year, but the curve is going up in the right corner of the chart. That's not good. There was just a report released last week, or yesterday, that said within about 30 years, the coolest year we're going to experience is going to be hotter than the hottest year we've already experienced. That's not good news. So we need to start looking at how do we address the problem of greenhouse gas emissions.
Let me make sure I understand you correctly. You are a U.S. Air Force retired general, and you are part of a group of other military generals and high-ranking brass that are retired that are going out speaking on these issues, correct?
That's correct.
And one of your main issues is that climate change is real, it's a national security threat, and we better deal with it.
Exactly. And I think the important part is none of us are representing either oil companies or renewable energy companies. I mean, what we really feel is we're representing our children and our grandchildren and their children. because this is an issue. It's going to take a while to appear. The problem is going to be that once it appears, it may be so far down the road that it's very hard to walk that dog back.
There's a Republican congressman in Alabama that is talking about some of the things you're talking about. And recently, Karl Rove came out and said that he was sorry that he endorsed him because how dare he talk this rubbish about alternative fuels and the environment and things like that. You can't have a society where one side of the political argument thinks you're crazy, sir, for even bringing this up.
Yeah, and I guess I would take the other side of the argument. Because all my life I've been in the military. In the military, we do lots of planning, and we plan on facts. We don't, hope is not a plan of action. In some people's mind, hope is a plan of action. Until catastrophe actually happens, they're not willing to do anything. I mean, we can look in Washington today with the budget crisis and the deficit crisis. I mean, until we get to the point where we're staring into the abyss, no one wants to do anything. And so that's not the way we operate in the military. So it's been very easy for us to say, well, give me the facts. And we know that we don't have all the facts. But we've grown up in a culture that you need about 80%, and you're going to have to make a decision, because if you wait for all the facts, it's too late.
General, permission to speak candidly.
Certainly.
There are some people listening to this conversation that are saying, how can it be that little old me, just one, the humans can somehow change the world's climate? That's ridiculous. The world is too big. Mother Nature's too strong. We are just a speck out there. How can we change that?
Well, sure. But all of a sudden tomorrow, everybody is not going to do one thing. But each one of us has to do what we can do. You can make yourself more efficient. That's a big part of what the military is doing. They're saying every gallon of gas that we don't have to burn is a gallon we don't buy, we don't transport, we don't protect, and we don't spew greenhouse gas emissions. So make ourselves more efficient. And I think the most important thing people can do is ask questions. Don't take the religion of a political side and say, yeah, that's fact. Ask the questions. I mean, you do it in your life at home. If you want to buy a gallon of milk, you check and see what a gallon of milk, where can you get the best price on the gallon of milk. Well, the same thing on some of these facts that come up on blogs, come out in newspapers. Find out who's paying the guy that's giving you that fact.
Interesting thought, General Ronald Keyes. If you could wave a magic wand, what would you like to see the military do here in the next 5-10 years?
Well, I think the military is on the right track. I don't think there's anything that they could do more than what they're doing now.
So they're doing as much as they can to preserve gas, alternative fuels, solar, wind, whatever else is out there.
Exactly. They position themselves so that they reduce demand, they've diversified supply, they're changing their culture. Now it's just a matter of time, because one of the big challenges for all of us is that whatever mechanism we're using fuel with, we can't go out and completely buy our fleet. Everybody's not going to buy a new car that's more efficient tomorrow. It's going to take time. The military, certainly, we've got airplanes that we've been flying for 50 years. So the opportunity to make them a lot more efficient, we don't have that opportunity.
You drive through the countryside of Europe, and you see fields of solar panels and solar panels and more solar panels. And is there a time when we're going to set up a base camp somewhere in the outpost of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, somewhere, and you're going to cart some solar panels to then power that base?
Oh, sure. In fact, they're there now. We've got that's part of the issue of diversifying supply, because again, every gallon you don't burn at that little outpost is a gallon you don't have to carry across that long road that's got adversaries on either side waiting to ambush you. And so doing things like wind, doing things like solar, doing things like taking your trash and burning it and using it to co-generate electricity reduces your demand, which then makes you safer in the long run.
Everybody says they want to support the troops. Everybody says they want to support the military and veterans. You're saying to support the veterans and support our military operations going forward to be as green and energy efficient as possible.
Well, it is, because it's a national security issue. The problem is that we send about $1 billion a day overseas to bring in oil. Now, wouldn't it be better to spend at least part of that $1 billion on renewable energy, things that we can do right here in the United States, because energy security is a part of economic security, which is a part of national security. We don't want to be in a situation where someone who doesn't like us can turn off the spigot and drive us into recession.
That is retired U.S. Air Force General Ronald Keyes talking crazy. General, where can we find more information on this?
If you go to www.cna.org.
CNA.org.
CNA.org, and we've got a number of reports that we've put together, a number of analyses that we've done, and I think you'll find them factual. We're not hyping any particular technology, any particular policy, Democratic or Republican, but we think they're very balanced reports, and you get your facts.
That is Ronald Keyes. First of all, sir, thank you for your service, and thank you for your time this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It is 7:32 on the Big 550.